Alright, everybody. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be talking a little bit about tubes and how they can help you achieve the tone that you're looking for, whether it be a brighter tone, a darker tone, earlier breakup, several different things. First off, I've got 4 different 12AH7s here. Actually, I've got 5. I just forgot to put the other one down there. Anyway, I've got 5 here, and I'm pretty sure this camera, it might be able to pick it up. Anyway, I got 5 different tubes here, and one of these tubes I never use. I hate the tube. The other 4 I use a lot. I should actually have 6, but somebody else has got my JAN, which stands for Joint Army Navy. Those are military type tubes, new old stock. I bought an old radio and it was full of them. All of them are 12AH7s, so I've got probably $400 worth of 12AH7s, but that I got for free. Anyway, your preamp tubes, they're what starts your sound process. And what I like to do, if I'm new to, or if you're new to playing tube guitar, the best thing to do is just get a whole bunch of tubes. 12AH7, 12AT7, 12AU7. Those would be the 3 I would get, and I would get 4 or 5 different brands of each type of those tubes. What I like to do is I put them all in one amplifier, and I'll try them out and see what sticks out the most to me, whether it's the low end, the high end, or the mid range it comes from. Then I'll swap to the next set, and I'll see what those give me. And I keep a piece of paper beside me, and I write down what I thought those tubes brought in sound wise for me. And then at the end, what I'm looking for in my sound, I will take a look at the tubes that gave me what I was looking for. And if one particular brand did not give me what I was looking for, then I'll take and start swapping them in and out. And the way you swap them in and out is the V1 of your preamp section of your amp starts the tone. And after that, it cascades through each tube stage until you reach the last 12AH7 or 12AU7 or whatever you have in there. And then it goes and converts to your power tubes and brings out the tone. So just keep in mind that whatever tube you put in the front, or the V1 position, it's going to cascade through the other tubes, and whatever tube you have in the last position is going to have more control over the makeup of the tone than, say, the one in the V2 position, which would be right next to V1. So what I like to do with my amplifiers, and what I found works for me, if I'm playing extremely clean, say Fender type clean, I prefer the JAN 12AH7s and 12AT7s. They work out the best for me because I can still crank the amp up and still get a nice bluesy crunch with those tubes, especially if it's running through a 6v6 style amplifier. Now, on the other end of this, we'll take the Jet City 22H, for instance. What I like to do is, starting on your far left, I run a JJ, then I run 2 tone saws, and I have the other 2 tubes out, but this tube here would be a JJ, and then the last tube would be a tone saw. That gives me the tone that I want. And I tried a lot of tubes. I tried the Chinese tubes that were in there that come with it, and I wasn't very happy with them. And one of the reasons I wasn't very happy with them is if you'll take and look inside the tube at your plates, your micro spacers, things like that, that's when you'll start noticing the differences. If you take that and you look at the tone saw has a totally different plate makeup. And the mica spacer is different. I like the way the mica's done in this because it reduces the microphonics, and the plate design seems to work out great for a darker, low-end to mid-rangey tone. And I like that. It reminds me of the old tone saw tubes, the new old stocks that they're selling nowadays for buku of money when you can buy the new ones, and they're pretty close. Now JJ, if you look, your plates on the inside are a lot shorter than the tone saw or the China-made tube. And the shorter the plates, the better, because that's the less microphonics you're going to run into. Only problem with that is now you're going to run into where this tube is going to make your tone brighter. And even though the JJ, the ECC 83, which is a 12A87, even though it's a great tube, it's still way too bright just to have 5 JJs in 1 amp, in my opinion. Now, if you like a really bright amp, you're probably going to want to run all JJs. Another tube that I picked up it's alright, but it's not the greatest tube in the world, would be a Electro Harmonics 12A87. And if you'll notice, it has about a medium plate in it. And they're alright, but what I've encountered a lot with the Electro Harmonics is these tubes have a lot of microphonics. I bought 8 of these tubes, and 4 of them I had to throw away. The microphonics were just that bad. Another thing a lot of people don't know, people look at Sovtek as a junk tube. And for the most part, in my opinion, a lot of them are junk tubes. But as far as their preamp tubes go, the design on their plates is a good design, especially the older ones. This happens to be a Sovtek 12A87R. The ones they sell nowadays are R2s and R3s. The R2s and R3s don't have the same tonal makeup as the straight R. It's hard to find these tubes nowadays. If you do find them, you're paying $25 to $40 a tube. And for a Sovtek, it's just ridiculous. But what you can do is, a little company most people know is Groove Tubes. And before I say anything else, I hate Groove Tubes. I think it's ridiculous that you pay that kind of money for somebody to match a tube that they just take and rebrand most of your cheaper tubes, which would be Sovteks and a lot of the Chinese tubes and things of that such. But a lot of times people will pull the Groove Tubes out of their amplifiers because of the same reason, and they will go ahead and just get some other type of tube. Well, what a lot of them don't understand is they don't know how to read a tube. This tube says Groove Tubes, and if you roll it over, it says GT, which stands for Groove Tubes, 12A87R. The R stands for Russia. Up under it, it says ECC 83 and 7025, which are all 12A87 style tubes. 12A87 being the highest gain tube you can buy. But if you'll turn it around on the back, and it's really hard to see it with this camera, but in silver, it's printed on the back, Sovtek 12A87R. I got that tube from a guy on Craigslist, and I actually got 4 of them for $1. You can't beat it. If you don't want to use them, you can buy them and you can relist them on eBay, and you can get 25 to $30 a piece for them. Another thing I want to talk about, as far as your preamp tubes go, is these little deals right here, your tube shield. These are there to help reduce the vibrations, and they're also there to shield your tube from RF signals, radio frequencies. But what a lot of people don't understand is these have springs in them. Okay? If you have a spring on a tube and you have your amplifier sitting on top of your cabinet, okay, that cabinet is going to vibrate your amplifier head. When it vibrates the amplifier head, it vibrates the tube. If it doesn't vibrate the tube, it's going to vibrate the tube shield. And what happens is that tube shield, which has a spring inside of it, will then start to vibrate, which vibrates on top of your tube, which can create microphonics. So what I do, my tube shields, I have them on when I'm transporting my amps. Whenever I get to where I'm going, wherever I'm going to play, I immediately take them off. There's no need to have a tube shield on a preamp tube unless you're just dramatically having real bad problems with RF signals. If you are, take the spring out and put the tube shield on. The only other time you really need one is if you have an amplifier to where your tubes are mounted upside down. You kind of have to have them then, because a lot of times your amplifier will vibrate the tubes out of their tube sockets. But there is a way to avoid that. If it's not a combo amp, if it's a head, take the head, set it somewhere else other than on top of your amplifier cabinet or in front of it. Another thing I want to talk about is your output tubes. This is a 6L6, just straight 6L6. You can get a lot of tone from your output tubes too. How, you ask? Well, that's easy. You have 3 different grades of output tubes. You have a hard, a medium, and a soft. Hard breakup means it takes longer for that tube to distort in the power section. So you're going to have to turn it almost all the way up before you ever get any power amp distortion, which is good for players who like their amps extremely clean. Again, Fender style. You can have it up really loud and it's not going to distort until you almost have it all the way up. And then you have a medium breakup tube, which is pretty much standard in all amplifiers. What that does, that gives you the best of the soft and the hard breakup tubes. Your tube will break up somewhere around 7 or 8, and you get a nice preamp or power amp distortion out of it, and you still have a lot of headroom. So if you want to play clean, you can play clean. Works great on a 2-channel amplifier, or even 3 channels, to where if you want your channel 1 to be clean and you want your channel 2 to be your overdrive or crunch channel, they work out great for that. Then you come into a soft branded tube. Soft branded tubes mean they break up quicker, which means that when you turn your amp up to 4 or 5, sometimes even 3, just depends on how low the vacuum in the tube is, it'll start to break up. I know a lot of you are out there asking, why does it matter to me when my power amp breaks up? Doesn't all your gain come from the preamp? 75% of your gain, yes, it does come from your preamp. 90% of it comes from your preamp if you're playing at low volumes like in a bedroom. But when you start cranking an amp up, whether you're in a studio, in your bedroom, playing a gig, the louder you turn it up, the more your power amp's going to break up. And if you've never been around a power amp that breaks up, you really need to take a good chance, take your amplifier outside or wherever you can, turn it almost all the way up and start playing and see if you don't notice a big difference in your gain and tone. It's a sweeter, smoother, overdriven sound, which is great. So try it and see if you like it. If you do and you play a lot of bedroom, if you play a lot in your bedroom, I would suggest you get a soft breakup tube. What that does, it allows you to be able to play in your bedroom and still be able to get that power amp distortion, which is awesome. And to explain to you a little bit of why it breaks up, a soft breakup tube, the vacuum in it is not as strong as a medium or hard breakup tube. It all comes down to the vacuum and how much the tube leaks. What that does, that allows it to be able to break up sooner. Although there is a drawback to this. If you get a soft breakup tube and you bias your amp to 65-70% of the dissipation rate, that tube is not going to last real long. If you play in the bedroom and you play, let's say 7-8 hours a day, even 4 or 5 hours a day, 6 months, maybe a year, depending on how little you play, you're going to have to replace that tube. Its tube life is over with. Because it's such a soft breakup tube. Then you're still running it at 65 or 70% of the dissipation rate. A medium breakup tube, you could probably go a year, maybe a year and a half, before you have to change those out. A hard breakup tube, unless you're just really, you'd have to be gigging like 2 or 3 nights out of the week and doing that for a year straight, then you would have to change those out. But again, if you're just playing here and there and not a whole lot, those tubes could last you 2, 3, even 4 years. It just depends on how much you bias the dissipation rate at. The more or the higher you bias it, the quicker that tube is going to go out. So just keep that in mind. Also, another thing I'll mention while we're talking about this, your amplifier. If you're playing a lot of bedroom stuff or even small gigs, and let's take the JCA 22H for, we'll use that as a comparison, which is what I have here. Alright, you're not getting the low end that you want, and you really don't want to mod it with a depth mod or any other type of modification. There's 2 different things you can do. One, you can get a BBE sonic maximizer. They come in a rack mount. They also come in a pedal form. Both of them are the same exact thing. They both work great, and they'll give you the low end you're working for. The other thing you can also do is you can take and you can mess with your EQ. What I would do, if you're missing that low end, turn your bass all the way up. Then wherever you have your mid and treble, adjust those accordingly to whatever you want your sound to be. And don't leave out the presence knob. Remember, that is an adjustment for the treble side. It adjusts that frequency. So you can take and you can mess around with it, and it'll take, and you should be able to get that low end you're looking for. Main thing is if you have, say, a 22H or a low wattage amp that runs EL84s, you're going to have to turn your master volumes up past 2 or 3 to be able to achieve that low end. So keep that in mind. Anyway, I hope that helped. And if you have any questions, comments, leave them below, and I'll try to answer them the best I can. Another thing I'll point out before I cut this video off, all of my amplifiers, I use a power conditioner. I actually use 2 of them, just to be 100% certain. A power conditioner, which is these 2 items here. I have a Furman power conditioner, and then I have a Natty Audio power conditioner. What I do is I take my Natty and I plug it into my wall socket. Then I take and I plug my Furman into the Natty. And what that's doing is that's acting as a double buffer, which is great, especially if you're running off a wall socket in a house. You're supposed to be getting 110, 115 volts out of that socket, but a lot of people don't know is you're not always getting a constant 110, 115 watts or volts out of that socket. A lot of the times it can drop to as low as 80. And what that does to your amp, that affects the tone performance on it. The less power your amp's getting, it's going to affect the tone. So just keep that in mind. Anyway, I'll be making some more videos soon. I hope this helps. And I'll talk to you again at another point. Thanks for watching my video.